Laura Sanchez, and today we are going to be making peach pie. So I'm going to show you once again how to do a pie crust, homemade pie crust. If you do not want to make your own pie crust, you can skip this part of the video and go directly to the inside portion of the peach pie. So to begin, we're going to need flour. We're going to need 1 1/3 cups of flour. And when you are measuring your flour, you do want to make sure that there are no air pockets in your measuring cup. So the way that I do that, you're going to need 1 1/3 cups of flour. I have here a 1 cup measurement, and I don't want air pockets, so the way that I avoid air pockets is by poking my knife in, tapping it on top, and just flattening it out so that it's exactly 1 cup. And I do need 1 1/3 cups for this pie crust, and so now I'm using my 1/3 cup measure. Same process with my 1/3 cup measure. The next ingredient is salt, and you're going to need 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So I have my 1/2 teaspoon measure. I just make sure it's level, and then I'm placing it in the bowl. And now I'm just gonna mix these 2 ingredients together. Now I need to get my Crisco, and I'm going to be cutting in the Crisco into my flour and salt mixture. The way that I do that is with a pastry cutter, I believe it's called. But some people, if you don't have it, you can use 2 butter knives and just crisscross them and chop it together. I did show how to do that process in my very first video on making strawberry pie. So if you want to see that technique, you can go check out the strawberry pie video. But for this video, I'm just going to use the pastry cutter. Once you have finished cutting in the Crisco, now you are going to get 3 to 4 tablespoons of ice water. I always, before I start, prepare my ice water separately, and so it's been in the fridge for a little bit, and I just need 3 or 4 tablespoons of it. I'm gonna see how it looks as I put it in there. The difference with this pie crust and the one that I did in my strawberry pie video is that for this pie crust, you are not going to bake it yet. You are going to bake the pie crust when you bake the peach pie. So this is 3 tablespoons of ice water, and I'm just going to mix this together. And since it's sticking pretty well together, I probably do not need any more water. So I think we're good with that. The next step for your pie crust is to put flour down on waxed paper, on your counter, on a cutting board. I use a flimsy cutting board. This is how I do it. You can do it however you want. So I'm just gonna flour the surface so it doesn't stick. I'm also going to flour my rolling pin so the dough hopefully doesn't stick on here either. You can always add more flour. Okay, so I'm just gonna take this and mush it together and knead it just a little bit so it hopefully sticks together with the rolling pin before I roll it out with the rolling pin. I'm just kind of squishing it down, folding it, smushing it down, folding it again. Probably gonna do it about 8 times, and then I don't know how many times actually. 8 was just a random number. Alright, I'm gonna reflour my surface because some of that flour just came up with the crust. Alright, so now I'm going to take my rolling pin and roll it out. I will tell you, I am not standing up. This is much easier when you're standing up, but I'm sitting, so it's kind of taking more elbow grease than than if I wasn't recording a video. Now I'm just gonna check to see if I have the correct size. And I think I do, not 100% sure, but it looks good to me. So I'm just going to take my cutting board. If you're using wax paper, it's the same process. And I'm just gonna basically fold it in half, get my pie plate, and I'm going to put it in. If it breaks while I'm putting the crust in the pie plate, that's fine. You can just fix it. Now, you see how there's extra dough on some of the edges and not enough dough on some of them? So we're just gonna move it over if it's not perfect. And what I usually do is whatever dough is hanging off the edges, I just take it off. The edges like this, I will just take off. And maybe I'll move it somewhere else, but so now I'm going to pinch the edges all around just to give it a little bit of an edge up top. And after I give it a little bit of an edge, then I will make it look slightly cute. Not a professional, I don't make it look amazing, but I just want it to look like a cute little pie crust. So once you have the edges pinched a little bit, now you're going to take your knuckle and your index finger with your thumb and just make indentions all the way around the pie crust. And there you have it. Your cute enough pie crust. Anybody can do it. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is move on to actually preparing the inside of this peach pie. Because we don't want it to get soggy while it is baking, we are going to take egg white and we're gonna beat it a little bit and then just brush it all on the inside of this pie crust. So we're just gonna use the egg white, not the yellow portion, not the yolk, well, the yellow portion, not the yolk. So I'm going to beat the egg white until it's a little bit foamy, and then it should be good enough to place on top of the pie crust. Okay, that has foam on it. It's got like some bubbles, and I don't feel like doing it anymore. So I think it's good. So I'm going to use my brush. I don't know if it's rubber or silicone. I'm going to use my brush and I'm going to brush it into the pie, onto the pie crust. I'm not only going to brush it onto the middle, I'm also going to brush it onto the edges. Okay, and now we're gonna set the pie crust aside and work on the inside of the pie. Okay, so for the inside of the pie, obviously you're going to need peaches, but before we get to the peaches, we're going to do our sugar topping, and the very first ingredient you're going to need is your flour, and we're going to need 3/4 cup of flour, which I already have out, thankfully. And we are going to go through the same process of making sure there are no air pockets, just so we have the right amount of flour. And I have a 3/4 cup measure, but I just used it and so it's dirty, so I'm using 3/4 cup measures. 1, 2, 3. So I have 3/4 cup flour. The next thing that I need is 1/2 cup of brown sugar. Since I have my 4th cup measure out, I'm just going to use 2 4th cups, which is equal to 1/2 cup. And as you may recall, if you saw my prior video on chocolate chip cookies, every time that you use brown sugar, you are going to want to firmly pack it into the measuring cup. So you can't just set it on top, you actually want to press it down in there and make sure it gets completely filled. So this is 1/4 of a cup of brown sugar. The next ingredient we're going to need is regular granulated sugar, and we're going to need a 1/3 cup measure. So I'm going to be using a 1/3 cup measure for my sugar, and I'm just going to use my butter knife to make sure it's exactly a 1/3 cup. And I'm going to mix these 3 ingredients together. The next thing we're going to do is cut in a 1/4 of a cup of butter. So you are going to once again need your pastry cutter or your 2 butter knives where you just cut it like this. So it's supposed to be chilled butter, a 1/4 of a cup, which is 1/2 a stick. And typically I will cut this into a few pieces in the beginning before I start using the pastry cutter. And now we're just gonna cut it until the butter is in small pieces. Once the pieces of butter are no longer in large pieces and they're pretty much little crumbs, then you're done. You don't have to keep going, but this mixture, 2/3 of it is going to go in the bottom of your pie. Before we put it into the pie crust though, I am going to go ahead and work on cutting the peaches. I already cut quite a few peaches just to save time. The recipe calls for 6 cups of peaches, but I'm going to be honest, I typically just go to this, whenever I'm purchasing my peaches, I just get 9 or 10 peaches, and whatever that's equal to, that's what gets put in my pie. I don't actually ever measure it, I don't believe. So you'll know just about when you're putting the peaches into your pie how much space you have. If you cut too many, then you're not going to put them all in. When you're cutting the peaches, you're obviously going to take the pit out. You're also going to want to peel the peaches. So the peaches that I did before, the skin came right off, which was a good sign. They're pretty juicy. So I'm gonna see if this one does it. Yeah, so the skin is just coming right off the peaches. Sometimes you actually have to cut them, but and I'm just cutting it into 4ths, and then each 4th I'm cutting into 4 pieces. If the peach has too many tough strings, you're gonna wanna take those strings off. You don't really wanna get that in your teeth while you're eating your peach pie. And in case you don't know what a ripe peach is, when it's like good enough to use the peaches for your pie, you do wanna make sure that they're not tough. They should be a little bit, not mushy, but a little soft when you feel them. And then you know they're pretty much ready for baking. Sometimes also the peach pit might leave like a little bit, might get stuck to the peach. Just make sure you take the tough parts off of the peach before you include it with the other peaches for your pie. Okay, so our mixture of sugars, we can put 2/3 into the bottom of the pie crust. It doesn't have to be perfect, but approximately 2/3 of this is going to go in the bottom of the pie. I'd say that's close enough to 2/3. Just gonna spread it evenly. And now I'm gonna put all of the peaches that I have into the pie crust. I probably have more than 6 cups of peaches, and some of them look a little brown just because I cut them earlier, but they're fine. It will taste amazing once it's out, once it's been baked. So yes, it is towering over the edges. It's a lot of peaches, but I'm just gonna kind of poke them in as best I can. And then I'm gonna take the rest of my sugar and put it on top. And try to evenly distribute the sugars. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, just do whatever you can. And you are gonna want at least like a 9-inch baking pie dish for this recipe. Like I said, I have no idea how many cups of peaches this is. The recipe calls for 6 cups. Your oven should be preheated to 375 degrees, and you are going to put this in the oven for approximately 40 to 45 minutes, or until the filling starts to bubble just a bit and the peaches are tender. Typically the edges, your pie crust should be a little golden as well. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, and enjoy. Happy baking!